Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back to one of our chats. This time we are on Black Dragon Gaming. And let me see. Let's get announcements out of the way. Patreons for both of us are in place. Disclaimer, this is an adult discussion, and some of those adults use adult language, so if you don't like that, you have been warned.
Thanks, Dad.
Yes.
Every time. We're going to say both of those things every time.
Oh, yeah.
Pathfather. And let me see. Today we're talking about CR 9 and 10 encounters, using monsters from CR 9 and 10 in encounters. Last week we talked about CR 9 and 10 as far as the monsters that we wanted to highlight. Now we're going to give you some encounters to use them in. Let me see. Kane will be running his subscriber appreciation soon. You've got till the 15th to get in. So,
yeah. I'm going to say now, we've only got 3 days left until the submissions are closed, so unless I get a bunch of last-minute entries that really just blow my pants off, I probably know who's playing. And I think we're aiming for this Saturday, schedules permitting.
Okay, so that's what it's looking like right now. I think that this will be up on a Saturday. If I'm not sure when Tommy's going to get it up, because this is going on in his channel. But
yep, should go down Saturday at 8 a.m.
Okay, so there you go. You better use this announcement. Oh well.
I was thinking like, oh jeez,
It's
We
on
did
the
it.
recording.
It's on the recording. It's canon. It's also on the next episode of Wednesday Afternoon Worship, so somebody will hear it. We're good.
Okay. Let me see. Giveaways. The monthly giveaway that the Planar Crossroads has is going to be giving away a Splat book this month. So, if you are a patron of at least the $10 tier, which is called our Giant tier, then you have the possibility to be entered into a drawing for a Splat book of your choice. It's going to be something that's right around the $12 to $15, maybe $20 range, depending. And it can be of your choice from any system. So go over to the Planar Crossroads if you want to do that, to the Patreon. I'm pretty sure Tommy's going to be getting close to doing another giveaway soon too, so keep subbed and stuff like that to him.
Yep, 424 subscribers is my next one, and I'm at, I think, 298 last time I checked, so we're getting there.
Yeah.
Breaking that 300.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And final announcement is St. Louis Comic-Con. We're all going to, not we're all going to be there, but myself, Tommy, probably Joe. I'm not sure. Joe, are you going to be at the St. Louis Comic-Con?
Yeah, I'll be staying with my sister. So she was there.
That's right. Okay, so Joe will be there. Kane will be coming down all the way from Canada. So,
Yeah, I still got to buy my plane ticket.
yeah, you better get on that, yo. Get the best price.
St. Louis is a really nice place in the summer. Everyone loves being there. It's great.
All right.
That's fine. But
Yeah, I looked up some pictures. You've got some sort of arch going on there.
the arch that we used to celebrate the time when we sent two dudes and a Native American woman across the country.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense to do an arch, but okay. Okay. All right. Let's get this chat on the road. So, Tommy, it's your channel, so you boss.
Deal. Okay. Can't find dice. Where are dice? I'm just gonna run them from me going up, and I'm on the bottom. So, we talked last week at the Planar Crossroads of a psychopomp that appears in book 4 of Shattered Star, the Kier psychopomp, and it's kind of like, I guess my encounter should probably go last because I'm borrowing everybody's monsters, but this is the focal point. The psychopomp that can hit you with the shroud at out to 15 feet. Creatures that come into contact with the shroud find it to be insubstantial, so they the psychopomp is invisible and slaps you with a shroud, you're not aware of it unless you have like true seeing or something. And if somebody has true seeing, maybe like probably, do we have dispel magic? Tell me we have dispel magic, Mr. kind of medium power outsider. Yes, no, maybe. No, we don't. Well, somebody will eventually. And what we do is we hide in invisibility. We slap people around with this shroud, and that triggers infectious fear, which sets up a DC 20 will save, or you become frightened for 2d4 rounds. And when a creature touches you, they have to make that save as well. So the encounter is essentially, we put them, these guys can meld with gravestones. These guys can, they have stone tell, but only with stone funerary structures. So the idea is we set up a really big, really expansive graveyard, and we hide one of the Kier for each PC somewhere in this graveyard. And then as they start moving in, for whatever reason you want to put them in, you slap them with infectious fear. If they haven't found the psychopomp, they don't they get the frightened condition, but the frightened condition usually triggers off like frightful presence on a dragon or something. The frightful presence is an entirely different story when we don't know where it came from. So my idea is, again, we have a psychopomp for each player, and we maybe not hit everybody, but hit everybody who's got the bad will save, and they'll fail it. And then when people start to stop them from perhaps running out of the graveyard, perhaps this is around the time that I had talked about a rock, have the rock come down, and rocks don't have fear effects. And I think we talked about, I don't think the Nuclevi that Kane talked about that I was super impressed with, and I'm kind of disappointed I didn't know that existed. Have those show up, and then suddenly they have fear effects. Suddenly the players are running away from these things. And the thing about psychopomps, the thing about outsiders in general, I guess certain games aside, they all look the same for what they are. All two Baylors, every Baylor looks alike, unless you want to flavor something else in. So players can't tell certain psychopomps apart, or certain Kiers rather, apart from one another. So we hit the who has a bad will save? We hit the barbarian or the fighter with the infectious fear, and then we can hit it from they'll think let's say we hit them twice is what I'm trying to say. Psychopomp A, psychopomp B hits the barbarian fails twice. Somebody goes to try to grab the barbarian or the alchemist or whoever who's running into maybe some kind of enchantment that is over a pit or something, and they might pass the first, succeed on the second. But if you hit the barbarian in the first round and then he fails, and then you wait around and then you hit him again after somebody's grabbed him, hit him again, and then somebody goes to grab him again, or maybe somebody is actively holding the person who's failed, and suddenly they infectious fear will trigger again. Suddenly they're making saves again, and the players might all scratch their heads, A, because they think they're good, B, because there's something giving them the frightened condition, they don't know what. It keeps them on their toes, and it keeps it this encounter is very open. Also, to add on to what I'm saying here, the psychopomp in question, the Kier can cast Minor Image, can cast Whispering Wind. Sounds like I'm not quite familiar with that spell, but I imagine you can use that to throw around some enchantment stuff, as well as Ghost Sound at will. Those DCs are a little lower, but you can still play around with those. And if you feel those DCs are too low, bring in somebody with wizard levels or slap wizard levels on a Kier. People are going to fail their saves eventually, and if they're not, if it's a bunch of paladins, and that works here because the Kier are neutral. Just again, slap wizard levels on them, raise DCs up a little bit. The idea here is we make a whole bunch of chaos that outside of the realm of true seeing, and somebody might have, maybe if the wizard spent all his gold with permanency at as soon as he got that 5th level spell, but probably they don't have it. So it keeps things really open-ended. It keeps things really like it keeps players guessing. And this is again around the time that the players have become a little bit stronger, and it's good to like shake the meta up a little bit in such a way that again they can like it kind of brings them back down to level one, back down to how does this work, that kind of thing. Anyway, I have rambled enough, so I'm just gonna run up and we'll go to Adam.
All right. So, mine is going to be a... Since I don't have that... Oh, that's spoilers for those that are going to get the visuals. That's my other one. I am going with probably the Nargassium Fiend, one that I did not cover last time. The Nargassium Fiend is the shifting mass of green seaweed transforms from the shape of a humanoid back to a patch of algae, continually changing. So this one, it seems, like it's like a big bunch of seaweed and it's going to be tough to deal with because it's hard to grab or something. Not exactly. It has something called Mirage, which doesn't have a super high DC. It's got a 18 DC to avoid it. But the Sargassian Fiend emits a powerful scent that causes specific mirage-like hallucinations. All creatures within 300 feet, so it's pretty wide, it's pretty large, like we're talking about with the Psychopomp Kier, and we're talking about with the Color Out of Space last time, 300 feet. They can save or become enraptured by the scent. An enraptured creature sees the monster as whatever would most compel it to approach. So this isn't just a random effect that's going to generate a random desire. This is something that you can say to your player, okay, you guys are walking through this kind of boggy saltwater marsh area. And you don't want to fall in because there's, you could drown in those things. But you have a Sargassian Fiend sitting in there, and he's doing his thing. He's wanting to catch one, and it does. You don't ask. You don't tell the player what they see. You go to the point to where the person fails the will save and you say, what does your character see? And you let the player fill it in, and it can be a big it helps people get involved with that in that type of an encounter. And that's where I would probably put this thing, where there's going to be some difficult terrain for other creatures to deal with, and getting these creatures into getting the enemies that it's trying to ensnare into the water in that saltwater marsh. And it has 2 slams, both of which have a grab. So that is pretty good, because all you got to do is hit with the slam, and then you can maintain a grapple with a plus 25 to do that. And they may get away, but you're going to keep grabbing them with a plus 25 to grapple. So, I mean, it's not going to be that hard to keep them that way. Sargassian Fiend also has a grab portion in there. It can grab huge or smaller foes. So it doesn't matter. Maybe it grabs your horse, your cavalier, and it grabs your horse. What are you going to run in now? How are you going to charge now, you Uber Chargers? But the Uber Charger probably have something to deal with that. At least if it was Tommy's Uber Charger. But it's grapple checks normal +4 bonus most creatures with grab possess, rather than the +4. But that's what it does, and it likes to, for players that want to get things from their monsters, this is another reason I wanted to pick this one for that encounter, because you have something to take away from the encounter built in. You have the strange pheromone that it produces, and you can crush it. It's only good for about an hour after being harvested. So this is one of those quick use things, unless you have something. I might, because it's an organic piece of material, you could possibly say that Gentle Repose would keep it fresh. But rules as written, 1 hour it becomes useless. But if you have it, you can crush it as a standard action to produce the same Mirage effect. and they usually make 1d6 bulbs of their musk when slain, and you gotta do a survival check to get them and all that. But it can be useful, especially have a alchemist around that could, or an alchemist or a hunter or something like that could harvest that pretty easily. So that's what I've got for my CR9, aside from its constrict and stuff like that, and those are good, but the main draw was to be able to use it, and maybe it's like a saltwater marsh area is what I was thinking. And that's mine.
Fair enough. All right, I can dig it. We pass up to Joe.
Okay, so this is this is. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. This is these are encounters made out of CR9 and 10 creatures, but this encounter itself is probably going to be way higher than CR9 or 10. And I didn't really get a chance to talk about this guy before, but I did mention him because I thought he was CR10, not CR9. He is the Clockwork Mage, which Tommy probably remembers. I had a campaign one time set in a weird steampunk kind of universe, I guess. Steampunk, but set in like Renaissance land, I guess. Tommy might be able to explain how he felt about it better.
I wouldn't call it weird. I wouldn't go, but some of the players were weird. I will say that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, don't throw a robe filled with your own fecal matter at an alien. It's not a good idea.
Probably bad.
But
though hitting on the door did work. Hitting on the door eventually ended up paying.
Yeah. I was going to say, so I've used these guys as the Clockwork Mages. I've used them in a game that Sarah was running, but I used them in an encounter as a GM. Not as actual like mages that were mobile and moving around, but they're actually kind of like a little defensive system set up inside of like a choke point. And essentially they can't move. I gave them, because they couldn't move, I gave them like a little bit better stuff on their AC, even though they have a pretty nice AC in the first place. But essentially what their point was is they're just going to fireball at them, try and dislodge them from places, and then just blast them with magic missile over and over again. And for the melee people, when they try and get up close, now these guys, I had them kind of spaced out. If I had to do it again, I would put them more in a group so that it was a bit more difficult for someone just to like kill them instantly. Even though they weren't killed instantly, they all kept their distance. But they have a pretty nice shocking grasp and magic missile they can cast at will. And then they have scorching rays. That's all right. And then they have a fireball once per day. So the way I think about it is their magic missile is their machine gun. Shocking grasp is like their little defensive power they have. And then the fireballs are basically just missiles. These guys have like other really nice abilities. Like they have like that's just the evocation guys. And like the grease is also pretty nice from the conjuration guys, setting up a place. Yeah, like a shoulder mounted cannon. I was kind of thinking of Fallout 4 with the missile launching turrets. But like grease is also nice. And they also, their abjuration, they have some nice stuff. Putting them in like a mixed group, like a mixed unit, having like an abjuration behind a evocation really would like benefit them from having this like I said, mixed unit of being able to interdepend on each other for when they have a problem and they need to solve it. So yeah, that's my CR9. Not my encounter constructed out of CR9 creatures.
Deal. All right, we go to Kane.
Okay. My CR9 pick is the same as the one I talked about last week. It's the Nuclevi. And if Adam doesn't already have that pulled up in the tab, it's Nuckelavee. The Nuclevi, unfortunately, doesn't really work well with others. It's sort of a like a lone monster. So I figured the encounter that would occur would say like a port town. A port town has been like dumping its refuse and offal into the sea, and the Nuclevi, being a Nuclevi, does not take too kindly to that. So it like lays an assault down on the pier, and it uses control water to flood the pier, and it's washing sailors and civilians off the pier into the ocean, and maybe there's something in the water waiting for them. Like I said, the Nuclevi works by itself, but I imagine you could do something. Maybe even just like what are they called in Pathfinder? Reef claws. Like reef claws or bunyips or jigsaw sharks hang around the pier because they...
Grundilos, the little goblin.
Oh yeah, or grundilos. Just things that, eat people's garbage. Could be hanging around there, so if you fall in the water, you're going to take damage from falling in the water because you're going to get attacked by nasty little things. On top of having to deal with the Nuclevi itself, which is terrifying. It's because it's a man fused to the back of a horse, both of which are skinless. You could give it a lance instead of a sword. I think Tommy was talking about that before. You could very easily give that thing a lance. It would be awful to deal with. It's got a breath weapon that gives disease. But I think like dealing with it in a scenario where it can swap back in between being on the pier and being on the water, where if you wanted to deal with it, you'd either have to shoot at it or follow it out onto the water somehow, would be that's basically how that would work.
Get to the unmute button. Fair enough. Yeah, I really, really like the Nuclevi a lot. I flipped through it in Bestiary. It's like, oh, that's kind of gross looking. Let's move on. I never stopped and read it. It is super strong and super powerful, and at some point in my career, I will find a time to use it. But for now, we will pass to Donald.
My favorite monster would be the golems, as you have a wide choice of golems for each type. And for the R9, I would be going with the coral golem. The creature at CR9, it's not that great, have AC 29, hit points about 100, saves are not that great, but the selling point for this monster, it have DR10 animate, and whenever it is in salt water of its size, so large size plus, it gets fast heal 5. So when you use the coral golem in salt water, and then you have, let's say, a cleric or someone who can actually heal the golem while in that area, these creatures can be pretty tough, especially if you have multiple golems facing the party. Generally, golems, if you use them against magic users, they're going to have a bad day due to most of the golems having the immunity towards magic. With each golem type, you do have a certain effect if you use certain type of spells on it. So if you use transmute rock to mud, the creature it is sold for some time. They take additional damage, and the creature loses a damage reduction based upon a limited amount of spells on the creature. So generally, golems by themselves, they're not that great, but it is important to use the environment to enhance them. And generally, you would find coral golems around coastal areas, oceans, and even coastlines, and even in the water as well. Especially if you're dealing with merfolk, they can definitely have coral golems guarding their sea god temples. And put them in a water environment, you're going to have a bad day, especially using all the swim mechanicals if you're not good at swimming.
I should leave Discord open so I don't have to edit these things afterwards, because I never know when anybody's done. Yeah, the swim mechanics can be really, really rough. I spent a lot of time not knowing what they were until we talked about the Scrag fight. Is super, like, you lose all your damage really fast.
Yeah. The thing about core golems, you need to use them properly if you want to use all their abilities. So a water environment, and they're good for the most part.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, with 100 hit points, unless the party have anime weapons by this point, it's going to take them time to actually kill them, especially in water, healing them.
Yeah, for sure. So my CR10 guy, and the Psychopomp I was talking about was CR10, but it's okay because at this point the CR has become kind of wibbly wobbly and arbitrary anyway. I kind of feel like, depending on the party, some parties, like if you're newer to Pathfinder or if you know the parties aren't there to like build real optimized characters, don't necessarily take this to heart. But I think like if you really want to make a battle a little more like active and challenging, you want like CR13, CR14, somewhere in there. But my CR10 monster to go along with my like lesser CR10 monsters, I honorable mentioned him last week. This week we're going to talk about him more in the full. The Boogeyman would be the monster I would use for this, and I'd probably just slot it in the Psychopomp encounter. Boogeymen have at will a quickened or no, it's not, this one's not a will, excuse me. 3 times a day they can cast Phantasmal Killer Quickened. And if you're running around through the graveyard and you've already got a neg 2 on yourself from being frightened, somebody, again, like the save is definitely in the realm of like someone will fail it. I guess if like someone's playing Illusion, to probably don't bring in a Boogeyman because they're telepathic and then it'll bounce back on the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman dies horribly. But in addition to all that stuff, Boogeyman can cast 3 times a day Hold Person, once a day Nightmare, and Nightmare is probably like secretly one of my favorite spells as a GM. If you've been watching Lordly Caliber, that's the first will save Xandu has to make is against Nightmare, which says, well, I'll just bring the thing up rather than paraphrasing it. Nightmare prevents restful sleep and causes 1d10 points of damage, leaves the subject fatigued and unable to regain arcane spells for the next 24 hours. So that's the Magi, the Wizards, the Sorcerers, the Arcanists, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. If they're in the party, and you can even, like, this guy can cast invisibility on himself, and you can set these encounters up by having Boogeymen just kind of, like, worm their way into the party secretly and then tag them with Nightmare when they're sleeping, and kind of, like, stun lock is the wrong word, but keep your wizard off his spells forever and ever and ever, so he can't just like teleport away or fly away. In addition, this thing has a 6d6 sneak attack on 2 claws. So, like, in addition to it being invisible and it being able to flank with a Psychopomp that, though it doesn't do damage, a Psychopomp that reaches out to 15 feet with its Shroud, the sneak attack is pretty easy to throw around. What else can we do on this guy? I don't want to just like, haha, Hold Person, and then coup de grace, but that's kind of the idea here. Hit him with the Hold Person, and then have the Psychopomp coup de grace, hit him with a quickened Phantasmal Killer, which, yeah, that's totally, watch it just not be a death effect. That's totally a death effect, right? Yeah, that's a death effect. Okay. And that's what makes these guys so gnarly. In addition, I believe they have, I think Terrible Rejuvenation is just fast healing. Yeah. While any creature within its deepest fear aura is suffering from a fear effect, so aka the Psychopomp effect, be within 30 feet of the Boogeyman, who can just kind of like, if things go hairy, it can pop invisibility, which I believe it does. Let me make sure that is at will. Yeah, that one is at will. So you just kind of like hit that and then stay behind the scared people until you're back at full health and just continue the assault. This is kind of like, the last encounter I described was a little more like change things up a little bit, make the players kind of role play their fear, I guess, because if you're frightened and you don't have an obvious source, like maybe have the players make a perception check, or like if you have good players, trust them to find a source of something to be afraid of. This is like, once you're done playing around with them, I guess, send in the Boogeyman, have the Boogeyman begin to rip them apart, and this thing can definitely do it. I guess like,
this Boogeyman does feel quite a bit like It from It, so...
Yeah, a little bit. To contradict what I was saying in the last encounter, this guy is neutral evil, so the Paladin can sniff him out. But even then, like, the Psychopomp on its own has enough stuff to, like, counteract that. So if they find the boogeyman, they don't find the psychopomp, or worse, they find the boogeyman, think the boogeyman was the thing doing what was happening because you as the GM used flavor text instead of stat blocks, and then they think they're fine, and then the psychopomps descend upon them when they're all at half health and just kind of round the encounter out. Speaking of round the encounter out, that is in fact my encounter for CR10, and we will pass up to Adam.
So, those that got to see the video that I'm capturing of the window that we have up got to see it beforehand, but I am using the NUE, the NUE, as my CR10 and talking about an encounter for it, because this thing is kind of interesting. It says it's materializing out of a noxious black cloud. This beast has the head of a fanged monkey and the body of a tiger with a viper as a tail. And it's not too shabby on its hit point. It's got 126. That's alright, to start off with anyway. AC at 24, it's definitely hittable, but what it has going for it is it has Pounce, as well as Energy Drain on a bite, or Poison on a bite, and it has 2 claws. So those things can start to add up. It's got a plus 17 to hit, so it will likely hit somebody. And with once a day nightmare, kind of like Tommy was saying, that's pretty hard on those spellcasters, but they're likely to make the saves if they know it's coming. But it has like Contagion, Hold Person, Shout, and Waves of Fatigue. Now this once a day Waves of Fatigue can be very useful if you use it right, because the NUE has a special ability called Cloud Form, and that noxious black cloud that it talks about is not just flavor text. The NUE can change into the form of a 10-foot black cloud or back to its normal form as a standard action. So it doesn't get all of its bonusy good stuff when it's in the cloud form, but it could it basically functions like gaseous form, which you can ask Kane and Alex how much I like gaseous form for bad guys and villains.
You just like stopping us from killing things.
Every good bad guy has a back door out. I'm just saying. So it functions as a gaseous form, except that it obscures vision like a fog cloud. So just have it roll in with the fog. And you can color it whatever you want. For all they know, it's just a thinner part in the cloud when it's dark out. And it can basically drift around to where it needs to be, get up into on a tree branch or something, materialize back, immediately do Waves of Fatigue so that everybody caught in its 30-foot cone, so around the fire, camping, everybody's in there. Somebody may have already went to sleep, and it does Waves of Fatigue on them, and the encounter begins with probably maybe at least, depending on how they're arranged. Waves of Fatigue does not have a save, so it does offer spell resistance but not a save, so it renders all living creatures in the spell's aura fatigued, and that's 30 foot. So it's a cone-shaped burst. You could hit quite a few people with that, just like real quick, and they start the encounter fatigued. That means that they're going to be less able to hit. I mean, it's not that bad of a problem, but it can pile up, especially if something else has been bothering them beforehand. Maybe they haven't rested yet. They've had a full day, maybe an encounter earlier in the day. Nothing super taxing, but something that may have drained them a bit. And this hits them with Waves of Fatigue that they don't get a save against, and then Then they are having to make saves against the energy drain, and that's 2 levels. It's a DC 16. It's not hard to pass, but it's 2 levels if you don't pass. You bite one spellcaster with with that, and they don't pass. That's affecting spells pretty quick. But that's especially if they've already used some during the day. So it's can be a pretty hard to deal with character. One final thing to mention is that some people call it a chimera. So especially when there are no real chimeras in that area. So say that you're running around and your players, not your PCs, mind you, but your players, they've encountered chimera before, or it's at one of your gaming sessions at some point. So they get hired to find a chimera. Well, they don't realize that in this, let's say, fantasy version of, I guess, India, maybe, would be a good one. India or Polynesia.
Japan, my dude. This guy comes from Japan. I knew I'd heard of it somewhere, but they come from, I'm not going to try to pronounce the word, but it's from Japanese mythology.
Well, there you go. So it is very oriental in its feel. So you could use any of those different areas, set it up, and tell the PCs, there's this chimera that we need you to go and deal with. So they're thinking, we got to go deal with this thing that has 3 heads. One of them's a dragon. It's probably young. If it's only, it's probably not that bad, because chimeras are not a CR10. They're lower than a CR10. So they're like, it's not going to be that bad. We'll get it. Easy gold, right? Yeah, easy gold, sure. They bite off a bit more than they could chew or get realized. And sometimes that can make all the difference. Not knowing what you're fighting can make all the difference to actually fighting it. And these things are intelligent, and they are genius level intellect at 17. So once you hit 16 and above, you're getting pretty smart. When you go and look at 10 being the average. So they like to terrorize and do things like that. Now, I just find them very flavorful and somewhat useful if you can get the situation set up right.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I definitely, this is another monster that I realize I have a really bad habit of flipping through the bestiary, and that looks stupid. Let's forget about this. Yeah, I like this guy. He's pretty sweet. Then again, like using stuff like flavor texting it as something else, especially when the locals don't know any better, is pretty strong against parties that, like pride cometh before the fall, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But anywho, so we don't ramble through time. Joe, you have the floor.
Okay, so this is another encounter that I've used before. Too bad it wasn't an encounter, but Tommy and Sarah just decided to just like.
Did we lose Joe?
I'm not sure if his internet cut out or mine did.
Can you guys not hear me?
No, yeah, I got you now.
Yeah, I've been talking. I've been on pause for a while. Okay, well, I'll go back. This is an encounter that Tommy and Sarah had to deal with at one point. They decided to go with it instead of fighting against it, so I didn't really get to test it out. But I'm looking at the Nosferatu, not just because now this is also going to be combining in the CR9 Moroi, which is like the pretty vampire along with these ugly vampires. But I threw some of these guys at them, and like I said, they just kind of like went with it and was like, all right, well, we'll go with them. So I never get to test it out, but I'm not looking at it because of the creature. I don't care about what they have in the actual thing. That doesn't bother me at all. Yeah, it's a 9th level rogue. I don't care. What I want to do is I just want to take the template that's provided for the Nosferatu and apply it to a creature of my design. And for some reason, the Nosferatu entry is not giving me the actual here we are. So throwing this Nosferatu increases CR by +2 gives the extra natural armor bonus. It's just a stronger standard vampire. So I have Nosferatu set on like the aristocrats of this vampire clan, and the Moroi. Oh, like Tommy and Sarah had to deal with Nosferatu riding in large dire bats, or Moroi riding in large dire bats, along with their like Nosferatu. Okay, goodbye, Tommy. Along with their. Well, should we? Is he recording or is Adam?
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't he the one recording this?
No, I'm recording.
All right, that's good. He's back. Welcome back.
Sorry about that.
As I was saying, Moroi riding their enlarged dire bats as like the foot soldiers, I guess, along with Nosferatu. Like they were magic users in this encounter that I designed. They were magic users. They were basically the Moroi's handlers. So I don't know. I think we've talked about this before, but sometimes you can just take a race with class levels on it, throw a template on it, and all of a sudden you've got a completely different encounter. It goes from you're fighting a bunch of pikemen to vampire pikemen, and it's enjoyable to sometimes just take like a standard encounter and throw something on it and make it a different encounter. Which I realize now the pikeman versus vampire pikeman doesn't sound that much different, but it really does change in feeling when you go from, oh yeah, you stab a human in the throat and he dies, to you stab this guy in the throat, oh, and all that happens is he looks really angry because you managed to hit him.
Yeah, I remember that encounter. I remember that encounter feeling more like story driven, so I didn't want to fight it with a mesmerist either. And here come all these things that are immune to mind affecting, and I don't have an answer for that yet.
Yeah, the thing is, those guys are actually not even like up to you. Most of those guys, except for the one Nosferatu that was there, they were all below your CR at the time. I just made a big show of it. It was a bit story driven, but remember, Tommy, you can always fight my story as much as you want.
I know, but that doesn't mean the story doesn't have a really high CR. It was definitely I guess I took the bait on that one. It definitely felt a lot stronger than what it actually was, which kind of
it was challenging, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't impossible for you to fight. I only ever make impossible challenges for you to fight if I have a way out.
Fair enough. By that same token, like what I'm saying is what Joe is saying about putting the template on just like whatever, it definitely changes the encounter. Because if that was just like, here comes some dudes with pikes, and there's one vampire there, it's like, yeah, okay, we got this, we can handle this. Bunch of vampires with bats and stuff. Yeah, no, maybe not. Anywho, I don't want to keep rambling everybody's ears off. Kane, CR10, go.
Okie dokie. My CR10 is the Gug, same as from last week. Gug is a large aberration. It has dark vision, a perception of plus 27, a lot of hit points, it's immune to disease and poison, and it's got 5 natural attacks. And a climb speed. The climb speed's important. So, like I mentioned last week, Gugs are ambush predators. So you can do this, I figure, basically like one of 3 ways. Pretty much really only like one of 2 ways. Actually, you can either fight the Gug by itself, or you can fight the Gug as a group of Gugs. Gugs are pretty universally reviled by every other living thing. So Gugs really only ever work with other Gugs. So if you're fighting Gug by itself, Gugs being sort of cowardly will ambush predator. Being ambush predators, they'll jump down on you, focus fire whatever it perceives to be the weakest or most delicious target, knock it unconscious, pick it up, and run away with it. And since they have compression, they can squeeze through little holes, they can climb up walls and on ceilings, and they can see in the dark. So unless you can also see in the dark, squeeze through little holes, and climb up walls, it's going to be pretty difficult to follow. And the fighting them by themselves basically offers you this encounter where it drops down, makes your party smaller, and then you have to deal with finding the Gug again to get your PC back, hopefully in time, or and like also potentially dealing with things missing a party member in between now and then. Alternatively, if you wanted to hire CR encounter, if you say you were like level 15 or whatever, and you were going to fight like 3+ of them at a time, you could alternatively do the same thing where like you get ambushed by more than one, they knock out like say 2 PCs, they pick them up and they run off with them, but they run in opposite directions. So you have to risk taking one and the other being eaten, or splitting up and each of you going after the Gug individually. You're higher level at this problem. Maybe you can take a Gug by yourself. But my
This
favorite
type of encounter is why we need Kane to run something, because 2 Gugs running off with PCs in different directions. I mean, come on. Yeah.
I think the real question there becomes what happens to a PC's bones when the Gug uses compression to get into a teeny tiny little crawl space, dragging the PC with them.
Well, it's a large creature, so if it's compressing into a space that's a quarter its size, that's about half the size of a medium creature. So the medium creature is just squeezing normally.
No, okay, yeah, fair enough.
And the small creature is not squeezing at all. Where was I? Oh, the third one. The third way I would run this encounter, which right now is my favorite, because I get to use the word nerd circle, which I never get to use anymore. Basically, you get a group of Gugs, and I would suggest replacing a Gug's greater bull rush feat with the improved awesome blow, since it already has awesome blow. And I imagine that it was initially sort of designed with this in mind, and either they took a different feat because improved awesome blow didn't exist at the time, or they just didn't want to open up PCs to this kind of ass kicking. If you don't know what awesome blow does, basically it's a type of combat maneuver that allows you to strike a creature that is smaller than you, and if you succeed, you hit the creature, deal damage, and send that creature flying 10 feet through the air and landing prone. Improved awesome blow allows you to do the same thing, obviously with a slight bonus on top of that, but the movement of the creature you hit provokes from your allies. So if you got 3 or 4 Gugs, surrounded your party with them, and just nerd circled your PCs in between the threatened areas of all the Gugs.
You're just playing volleyball at this point.
Exactly.
A GM tear goes down the cheek, and you just say, "That's beautiful."
That's pretty good, yeah.
So you have your 4 claws, your 1 bite, your rend special attack. If you manage to hit with 2 of your claws, you awesome blow them through the air. It passes through the... Oh, by the way, since Gugs are aberrations, they have a feature that a lot of aberrations had. Despite being a large-sized creature, they have 15-foot reach. So you knock them through the air, and they pass through the threatened area of all 3 other Gugs, and they just...
That is super sweet. Yeah, I really like that.
And then they pick you up and they run away with you.
And then they pick you up and they run away. That's assuming you survive the volleyball match. That turns out, because what's stopping? Well, I guess what's stopping it is the attack doesn't say attack plut awesome blow. I imagine Gug A hits you, you fall into B, B hits you, and then awesome blows you again. You could almost set up a bunch of held actions to just awesome blow oh man, that sounds great. Awesome blow the player around in a big circle and just get your D6s out to count the number of times that they provoke from the other arm that swings up. Yeah, that is super sweet.
And
I mean the volleyball match would get progressively smaller because they'd knock out one dude, Gug 4 would pick up that body and screw off with it, and then they'd knock out another Gug 3 would screw. Eventually, you'd survive, but there'd be one of you.
You'd survive, but your friends maybe not.
Yeah, alone in the dark, and you gotta pick which of your friends survives and which of your friends get eaten.
I love it. Okay, Donald, take us home.
This is a pretty good CR10 monster. It's the noble salamander. It have about 160 hit points, AC 18, but you can easily change the AC to make it be over 20 easily enough with using armor and a shield. This creature, it can make its own armor due to the craft skill it have. It's have a plus 23 toward making weapons, and then it's pretty good at making armor as well. So that's not too bad. And then weapon of choice uses a long spear. So based upon what type of salamander you use, you can change the weapon type to suit its personality. This creature, being a pretty powerful creature, being more martial, you need to know how to fight this creature properly in its own environment. Just like the coral golem, this creature, it prefers very hot places. So any type of place like hell, the abyss, or any place where it is very hot, 500 Celsius or more, you need to begin to make saves every single round not to pass off on that heat. So the salamanders, being immune to fire, they can use some of their amazing spells on the other party members, not the player characters, and not injure their party members, such as Burning Hand, Fireball, Flaming Sphere, Wall of Fire, three times per day, and the DC is not that high, but it's going to do a bit of damage. And then it have once per day, Dispel Magic, Summon Monster for a huge fire elemental, which is pretty nice. This creature gets to do a lot of attacks, and it does have power attack, which is pretty nice. So Tail Slap is pretty good, 2d8 plus 3 plus grab, and then another 1d8 fire damage, and then its melee weapon is effectively with a large size weapon, plus 13, plus 1d8 fire damage. And if you have a character that casts buffs on this creature, such as haste, that's more damage. Combine the environments that they're in, that the players need to make a fortitude save or any save in their own environment, which is pretty hot. They're pretty tough when you're fighting them on their own turf. And this creature is pretty stealthy if on their own plane, so they can easily sneak upon a party, especially if they're in a fire plane somewhere. So yeah, the Noble Salamander is a great martial class monster if you want to use them as a group to do a lot of damage in a short amount of time.
Man, one thing I do have to say about these guys for sure now that I'm looking at them is this is one of the very few monsters I can think of off the top of my head that like the power attack stats are automatically figured out in his stat block, at least at D20PFS or D.com. And I really, really appreciate that because a lot of times, and this is probably just a personal thing because like if my characters have power attack, piranha strike, or whatever it is that is buffing my damage, I'll just automatically take the negs and assume I'm power attacking forever and ever and ever because why wouldn't I? And like when I go to GM, for example, these guys, pretty much everyone here but Adam had to fight a bunch of cave giants that weren't power attacking that entire encounter, but I thought they were. And then I look at the stats and I go, wait, damn it.
Most of them.
Yeah, we might have been dead before Enderling got there if they had been.
Yeah, we would have been dead for sure. Most monsters in the bestiary doesn't have the modifiers taken off if you're using power attack or any of those feats. It's assumed that the GM know to take those modifiers off.
Yeah, I'm thinking at some point maybe on these Around the Hearths, maybe on my channel individually, I'm going to do like a how to run it for individual monsters because like I feel like a lot of monsters just have like big stat blocks, and if you're just grabbing something on the fly or you don't necessarily have like a vast and wonderful knowledge of Pathfinder, the encounter isn't as powerful as what it should be. But again, to drive the point home, what I'm saying is the power attack on the +3 long spear, which I guess if no other reason use salamanders because there's a +3 weapon for a CR or for a level 10 party, they might not have +3 stuff yet. But that's a 2d6 plus 25 with a +19 to hit, and then there's a d8 of fire on top of that. So yeah, that's 31 damage on average plus an extra d8 of fire. That doesn't feel good for anybody. It's not the best to hit in the world, but it might hit.
They're gonna have to earn that +3 long spear.
The good thing about the weaponsmith
They're
skill
hard.
they have, the they at the NPC, you could use them as a item maker in a place like Sigil or any multiverse major city. And with them being size large, they can use any large size weapon effectively, doing more damage. Put a great axe in there, 3d6, or a claymore, 2d8, something more damage, and people are going to have a bad day.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sitting here flipping through it. I kind of like it. Sort of bums me out when they specifically go out of their way and say like this monster is good at crafting stuff, because I feel like that's like the permission slip for the GM to be like, hey, it says I can do this. It has whatever I want it to. You as the GM have that power. You can always do that. But like I've had 2 experiences with salamanders in my nerding career. The first time was in 3.5 in a group that has long since fallen apart before. Like I really started liking tabletop stuff. / I started getting serious about it, and like I was playing a werewolf at the time. I had damage reduction and stuff, and these things still like overwhelmed the party. We just opened the door and here's 3 salamanders. We're all super dead. Now, on the other side of that, once we knew what we were doing, I don't remember exactly what happened to the salamander. I think somebody's tail got like ripped off or something like that. This is close in time to when this event, the first one happened, but it's a long time ago, and I don't remember that one as well. But yeah, no, these guys are super strong. Also, like with that long spear, that's a reach of 20 feet. These guys don't have combat reflexes. Sometimes I think that's because like not necessarily Paizo, but whoever made the monster wants to pull punches a little bit because certain feats are really good. And when you have a reach of 20 feet and you hit that hard, combat reflexes is kind of like you want that. It has cleave and great cleave. So that's like, those are good feats as well. But a reach of 4 squares and, oh, my dex is 11. Okay, never mind. I see why I don't know. Buff his dex and then give him combat reflexes. He will be awesome.
Now wait
That
a
is
minute,
a
you're
awesome.
saying how awesome this monster is, and then you're like, buff him up even more, kill him harder.
Well, because he needs combat reflexes. He needs to be a good boy.
Yeah,
Put
combat.
4 of them in the room and play volleyball with your piece.
Yeah, combat reflex is such a useful feat, especially for reach weapons. When you get past a certain size, it gets pretty insane how far a weapon reach can be. I did use a salamander once in a game I GM'd in a wizard's tower that was on a plane of fire, and the players had a bad time with all the saves they had to make, and not just the salamander themselves. The players had a bad day making saves, just surviving the fire damage they would be taking normally, being on a plane of fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I kind of like, I guess in all of the like monster bloat, for lack of a better way to say it, and I hate that I'm using the word bloat because I feel like the people that don't like Pathfinder say feet bloat or splat bloat or whatever to like disparage it. But in all the like, here's a new book, here's 150 new monsters for you, wee! I kind of forgot that these guys from like way back in 1970 something or 80 something probably existed. And I can definitely get down with these guys for sure. There's a lot of monsters that I need to try to figure out how to fit into Lordly Caliber because I'm really liking the stuff we're talking about. Also, this thing has DR 15 over magic, which, I mean, like, people will break that at level 10 probably. But if you're a low magic game or a no magic game, that shuts off a lot of classes if they're not like Ugg the Barbarian with his great axe.
Yeah, most creatures or characters by CR10, they have at least a magic weapon of some kind for sure.
Mm-hmm. But if they don't, they're gonna have a hard time hitting this guy. Can we sunder? Tell me we can sunder, Mr. Scary Man. We cannot.
Nope, but you can still sunder at the action still, but you'll be at a penalty.
Yeah, we just like use our weapon to do it and have a reach of 20 feet. I can get behind it. Anyway, we are at 8:03, so I guess I'm gonna just kind of like, if anybody else has any final remarks they want to say about this CR before we are officially halfway done with this series of Around the Hearth.
Yeah, I do.
And you finished on time.
And we did.
Which is the first? my note, CR10 and DR9 monsters. This is where if you want to have a high-end mark to end a campaign on, level 10 is a pretty good point to end most campaigns, especially with the monsters you have at this CR.
Man, if a campaign ends at level 10 and I didn't know it going in, I feel super cheated because I feel like we got like halfway through. I understand the nature of.
Well, even you
Go ahead,
you
Ed.
would feel robbed even if they played Gug volleyball with you and you died.
Yeah, because somebody by 10th level, like for example, the witch, the first grand hex, I think any witch should get. I forget what it's called, but it gives them resurrection without the material component. So there's just take my arm, bring me back, and then just go again. Is that kind of thing?
I don't feel like Gugs leave that much behind.
And they might a bit of hair, a follicle somewhere, or just rip his arm off.
Gaga volleyball teams would be quite fun to see.
They got 4 arms. That'd be terrible.
Technically, they have 4.
They have 2 arms, each arm of which ends in 2 hands.
Each arm is bifurcated.
Tommy, I could imagine this. Gaga professional volleyball team, and people watch the Gugs to see how well they can actually kill adventurers.
Gug basketball, Gug baseball teams, Gug football with that improved bull rush. I'd watch that.
So what we're saying is that we should play a future of Pathfinder where they're in between Starfinder and Pathfinder right now, where they actually have specific sports teams for they have national sport teams that go around and stuff like that, and have championships and stuff.
So Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blood Bowl in Golarion.
Do you think the worst part for me about dealing with Gugs is Gugs are only in the Underdark. So for starters, you're in the Underdark, which is already terrible.
Yeah, that's if you're there.
Because if you didn't bring enough food with you, you can't buy food anywhere. You're gonna have to kill and eat something, and everything that lives in the Underdark is awful.
Yeah.
The Underdark, it's a terrible place. Unless if you prepare well, you're gonna have a bad time there. And then you have the Drow, the Draugr, and everything that want to pretty much kill you, or put you in chains, or sacrifice you.
But I think we're getting.
Everything that lives that far underground tastes awful.
Yeah, especially if one of the characters happen to be a surface elf, and you come across a drow. Fun time for the elf.
That's what this that's what the spell, what is it, ancestral regression is for.
Yep.
That is a very fun spell. I used it once for a villain in a game I GM'd once.
So we're at time.
We're at time, Dad.
Yes.
Father.
Pathfather has spoken.
The Pathfather has spoken. The Dead Finder. No, that sounds like a weird dating app.
It's Star Dad.
Right? That was exactly my thinking. Was.
So Dad, it's Dad Finder when we're playing. It's Star Dad when we're playing Starfinder, and it's Pathfather when we're playing Pathfinder.
Stardad. Dig it as a disco ball drops from the ceiling.
Yeah, star glasses. I've got.
Why would we call you Starfather?
Starfather.
Yeah. I like Pathfather, and I could deal with Starfather. Anyway.
No, well, you're not Starfather though. Greg is Starfather.
Greg is Starfather.
Yeah.
He runs that. But that's everything we've got today, people. I was glad to get back with my friends, talk about some CR monsters. Thank you for watching on Black Dragon Gaming, our talk about CR 9 and 10 creatures and how you can use them. We hope you liked our suggestions. If you have your own suggestions, put them down in the comments below. But that's all we've got for now. Tommy, you want to sign us out?
I think you pretty much signed us out there enough. Be sure to like and subscribe to both of our channels for more sweet videos, and we'll see you next time, guys. King, go play me off.
Ba 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 ba.